Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
It is a man who's definitely friend of the station now, third time that I know, and he might have even doing some sneakies elsewhere. His name Warren Davies. He's the Unbreakable farmer. He is doing some marvellous work helping particularly agricultural mental health, but I'm sure lots of mental health issues right across the country, and delighted to have him back. Warren, good morning and welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show.
Good morning, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
You're not going to get much of a reputation, though, if you hang around with Rob Cameron for long.
No, he's all right. He and I are buddies. He's been in the studio and doing great work. We had a pretty emotional morning together, and I'm loving the work you do because I know of so many people in agriculture. It's probably the toughest gig, Warren, when every day you look skyward and your whole life depends on what's happening in the weather. And we talked a lot about it, when those things that you can't control, and sometimes they really do get you down, and you've had a personal experience in that and now helping others, and it's a great story. Let's go all the way back for the listeners who haven't heard your other two visits to the station. Warren, what got you into trouble where you thought, actually, I'm really in a bad spot?
Yeah, I suppose it was just not having enough respect for what I call my silent business partner, and her name was Mother Nature. And growing up as a kid, I actually grew up in Melbourne and probably didn't realise the impact that Mother Nature would have on my career once we moved to the country, and that was in the form of a flood and then a drought, and in between that we had a family bust up on the farm, and a lot of those challenges that I faced, which are not unique to me, but some of those challenges that I faced triggered what I call my mental health journey, and that was on the back of an underlying story of growing up, not kind of fitting in and being bullied at school, and some of those things that I didn't deal with early on in life, and when the stress of those challenges hit me, it triggered what I call my mental health journey.
The question, I guess, some people would be thinking, Warren, and I'm certainly in the same boat. Most people not most people, a lot of people who work in agriculture because their dad did, and their dad did before them, and their dad did before them, and they've lived on the family property for the last 50, 100, 150 years. A city boy saying, I tell you what, I'll take up farming. What led you? Surely you would have realised it was a tough gig. What was the appeal about picking yourself up and moving to the bush?
Look, that was Dad's decision.
Oh, okay. You didn't have any say in the matter. Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Dad was a butcher by trade, and always harboured this dream of being a farmer, and that's what got us to move to the country. But we also had friends that were dairy farmers in Gippsland that had just moved to the Golden Valley up to Mooroopna, just out of Shepparton, so that was an appeal as well. And Mum's uncle was a dairy farmer up at Tregow in Kerrang, and we always visited, spent weekends, and that was probably the time when Dad decided he dropped me off at our friend's new farm up in Mooroopna, and I was spending a week there, and he nicked off into the real estate agents in town and had a couple of sneaky peeks, and then when I got back to Melbourne a week later, they'd kind of sold the house, and we were moving. So, which was for me fantastic because I loved farming, or what I thought farming was then, and farming to me as that kid growing up, that Melbourne kid, was all about motorbikes, tractors, and slug guns. Like, that's what I thought farming was about. But moving to the country and then choosing it as a career created a whole new passion for agriculture. And people ask me quite often, once they've heard my story, would you change anything? And that's definitely no. I wouldn't be here talking to you on the radio if I changed things. But it's it was something that I fell in love with. Like, I loved agriculture.
Because when I was a youngster, I took on a career in teaching, which lasted 5 years. And then, a lot of people take on a career to be an accountant or whatever. When you go into agriculture, you don't take on a career, do you? You take on a lifestyle, and you take on a whole, it's not something that you go, oh, I'll go home now, it's 5 o'clock, I can leave the office, I'll go back, and and tomorrow morning, I don't feel all that well, I might take the day off. It doesn't happen that way, does it?
No, it becomes all consuming, and it becomes your identity, and that's one of the things that I talk about through my presentations is, we ended up, losing our farm, and I lost my identity because I worked so hard to get what I got, and then, it's not just a job, like it's not like losing a job, and it's really not like just losing a business either, even though it is, and that's something that I try and get through to people that are in that decision-making process, whether they, stay on their farm or they move on. Is that, it's not just a business either, but it is. It's not worth losing your life over. But it's your passion. It's where your kids grow up. It's your house. It's your dreams. It's everything, and it's all consuming. And it's easy to really attach your identity to that and believe that's all you are, really. And when things become really challenging, or you're faced with challenges like I was faced with, that ended up seeing us walk off the farm. It's that loss of identity is a massive challenge to deal with as well.
The decision to help others, make a difference for others. How easy or difficult was that for you at the time?
Look, after losing that farm and losing my identity, I was on this journey trying to find out who I was. Even though, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a son and a brother and a mate and a community member. All my identity was tied up with that farm. So I was now on this search to try and find out, well, who am I? What's my value in the world? And that journey led me to do some different things. I tried to break free from agriculture. I did real estate for 3 years as a dairy specialist in Shepparton, and it was a bit of a failed attempt. Like, the kids got sick of eating baked beans after a while because I wasn't making enough money. So I went back to agriculture because I could do that. I went back to dairy farming because I was really good at that. But that journey was still not fulfilled, and then I decided to do a speaker course and did that as a bit of self-development, and learned a bit about myself at that course, and then also realised that there might be some value in my story. And not that I'm fairly humble about what I do, but felt there might have been some people listening, and then it just snowballed from there. And 6.5 years later, that's what I find myself doing as a full-time gig.
Well, Warren, I've been really taken by some of the stories you've given where you've had an impact, where people of all ages and situations have come up and said thank you, or they've shared some stories. But have you got to the stage now where statistically that even if someone from a presentation doesn't come up and have a conversation with you, that someone's going to leave that room a better person?
It's one of the things that I've kind of focused on as a speaker. So I don't focus on statistics at all, even like the rate of suicide and the suicide statistics in Australia. I don't even focus on them because I've now witnessed firsthand the actual ripple effect of one person, and it doesn't matter how many there are. If there's each individual community, if there's that one person, that ripple effect is huge. And the same with my speaking. I don't need to be told that thank you or you've made a difference or anything, because I know that there's people out there that are listening. And that's one of the things I talk about, gratitude, in my presentations. At the end of my presentation, I always say, I hope you've been able to take something away, and what would make me truly grateful, one, is that if a group of people want to listen to a washed-up dairy farmer speak for an hour, that always makes me grateful. But if they can take something away that they can help themselves or help someone that they love, if they've resonated with any part of my story and they can use that, that's what would make me truly grateful. And I just go in with that that I suppose, agenda to every presentation. I'm not going to resonate with everybody, but if that one person can take something away, well then, I've done my job and I've fulfilled my mission of, creating that awareness and education around mental health and well-being. I've inspired the conversations and then hopefully I've empowered people then to seek help in a safe environment.
We'll be talking for a little bit longer to Warren, but if you're listening to this, folks, and it's triggering anything with you, we'll give out a couple of really important phone numbers at the end of the conversation. So please make sure you've got a pen if that's where your mind is at the moment. So, Warren, you talked a bit about the fact that it is a bit like losing a business, and a number of our listeners would not be able to sort of identify with the sort of all-consuming life on a farm. But I guess a lot of the things that you've learned going along the way are equally applicable to men and women who are in high-pressure jobs or running their own business. What are some of the things that you've learned in terms of, I guess, outlets and being able to address some of these issues?
Yeah, well, I've got 3 simple lessons that I talk about quite often, and why they're my lessons, because they were my greatest failures, and this is applicable to anybody, and really they're universal lessons that we can use in any part of our life, whether it is our mental health or our physical health or our business or our relationships or our finances, whatever they are. And I think number one, communication is key. It's so important to talk about the challenges that we face, talk about our stresses with our support network, with the people that are around us supporting us. That's really important, and particularly around mental health, because, even though we've come such a long way breaking down the barriers and that, there's still some stigma around, putting your hand up and saying, look, I'm struggling with my mental health. Like it's a lot easier for people to say I'm struggling with my physical health because people can see that, but not often you can see someone struggle with their mental health. So communicating is really important. Staying connected is my second lesson, and that's so vitally important because isolation is the biggest killer in our community. So we need to stay connected with our friends, our families, our support network. One of the things that I talk about, it's one of the key messages I want people to take away from my presentation, is understanding, if the proverbial hits the fan, who are the 5 people in your life that you can lean on and have these challenging conversations with. And sometimes it's not quite the people that you think it's going to be, but trying to identify those people, acknowledge them, and let them know that they're part of your support network, and obviously offer the same to them. And if they're struggling, you can be part of their support network and start building these, connected communities or connected groups that you can lean on when times are challenging. So that's really important, is staying connected. And there's another so important, very valuable part of any community, and that's, everyone in that is travelling a journey, and everyone's picked up some wisdom along the way. And, we all hold our wisdom really close to ourselves, one, because we mostly think it's insignificant, but if you share your wisdom with people, the piece of wisdom that you're holding on to so tightly could be the piece of wisdom that someone, your next door neighbour or one of your mates could have been searching for forever to be able to move forward. So we need to share our wisdom. That's another important part of being connected. And thirdly, it's about seeking help. If you are struggling, there's no shame and no weakness in putting your hand up and asking for help. Putting your hand up and asking for help is, actually a sign of strength, and you're better off doing that than just keeping it internalized and just sitting there and dwelling over, because that does no good for your mental health. And if you are in that spiral, you just continue in that spiral. By putting your hand up and asking for help, at least people know where you're at and they can support you. And you're not suffering in silence anymore because you have stuck your hand up and asked for help. So there's 3 really important things that, I think are vital in, as I said, in any situation. They can be universally used through our lives. So they're 3 tips that I like to share all the time.
Warren, based on that conversation, and I was thinking about this after our last chat together, was the message is you're sending a message of support to the person struggling with mental health. But for me, the ripple, when we talk about the ripple, no matter the situation, someone external of the person struggling is affected by it. Your messaging to them, being able to assist. So sometimes when we say, we won't talk to mum or dad today because they're grumpy, yet you're saying isolation is the worst part. So it's those people in the ripple pond, what they can do back the other way to support someone that they know is struggling. Are you sending messages to those people as well to arm them with the right thing to do? Because let's face it, a lot of people don't know what to do when they see someone struggling.
That's a really good point, because and it is something that I share, because a lot of messaging around mental health is reach out for help, and it takes a lot of courage to reach out for help. I know that firsthand. It takes a lot of strength to put your hand up and say, I need help. But it's exactly the same back the other way. For people that notice someone struggling, it takes a lot of courage to reach in and ask them how they're travelling. That takes a lot, and so I do arm people in my presentation with some tools around that, how to start those conversations, some of the signs to look for, asking, some open-ended questions. Like I always say this with the utmost respect in my presentations, and no disrespect to any mental health initiative in Australia, but like if I ask you two fellas this morning, are you okay? What are you going to say to me? You just, generally, most people in an audience are just going to nod their head, and you say, yeah, like, I'm okay. But we really need to ask some deeper questions and ask, if you're really concerned, if you're reaching in, if you've noticed someone who's struggling and you're really concerned about their well-being, you need to ask some open-ended questions that are going to reach in deeper and continue that conversation. So I do share a lot of those sort of tools for people that are in a community that are noticing someone struggling, as well as the person that's struggling, how they can reach out as well.
Because I think one of the things I notice, Warren, I work in the corporate world a bit, and, back when I was a little boy, my mother used to always tell me, if anyone said, how are you, you'd say, very well, thank you, regardless of whether your leg had fallen off or not. And these days, the response to how are you, mate? It's always, I am so busy. And I'm tempted sometimes to say, I didn't actually ask you how busy you were. What I asked you was, how are you? And I put down and I, again, absolutely think the Are You OK Day thing is a great concept. But I think the reason it has come to pass is because when people say, are you okay normally, people go, I'm so busy. This thing of almost like a badge of honour to be incredibly busy, brackets even if you're not close brackets, I think that's a major issue as well.
And there's a perfect example of that open-ended question, because you've asked, are they okay? And they've go, I'm incredibly busy. And you go, no, I haven't asked you, are you busy? How are you? And that starts that conversation. There's a beautiful example, living example of how we can continue that conversation, because everyone's busy, and they're exactly right. We get stuck in these ruts and answer questions that, the same way. And we need to, I think we've, through the age of social media and, or if you want to use tweeting, for example, 180 characters or whatever it is, we've learnt to be able to just articulate how we are in really short sentences or just short words, instead of, we've lost that art of conversation. And that's one of the things that I love about doing what I do. And I was saying to Rob off air, I was in Hatfield in New South Wales yesterday, 100 k's north of Balranald, in the middle of nowhere, and one of the guys came up to me and said, I asked him where he come from, and he said, look, I live just up the road. And I said, oh, that's good. He go, oh, whereabouts? So that was his go-to line, about up the road, just up the road. And I said, well, whereabouts? He goes, oh, about 90 k's north of here. And so then we started this conversation. And that's what I love about doing what I do, is, getting into these communities and not so much presenting. I love doing that, but it's the gold happens either before or after the presentation, when you have these conversations and you find out more about these people, and then all of a sudden that conversation then leads to, some of that stuff you were saying in your presentation is actually how I've been feeling as well. And then you can say, oh, look, I know someone that you can talk to, or you should grab this resource, and you can tap into that, or or try some of these strategies. They might be able to help. That's why I love doing what I do.
And given that you've obviously had your own mental health journey, is it difficult not to, I'll use the word take on, if that's the right term, these issues for yourself and say, oh, geez, that poor bloke over there, he's got that and all that. Do you feel burdened by taking some of those conversations on?
Burden's not the word, but I realised something about myself during COVID when I wasn't able to travel around, do what I do. So I went back driving tractors on a farm for 3 years. And there was some stuff happening around to some people that I'd met, during the bushfires and people that I'd met and family members as well. And then I realised something about myself, and I am an empath, and I've discovered that about myself, and I do take on a lot of stuff as well. But I've learned some strategies, particularly when I'm driving home from an event or something like that, where I can kind of self-counsel myself or decompress a little bit. But I do have a good support network around with my family, one, and two, I've got some professional people that I can talk to if there's something that's I'm really struggling with. I'll talk to them, or I'll have found out the phone number or the email address or whatever of the person that I was talking to that I've taken on their challenge, and I'll start a conversation with them, and just and that helps me. At least I know that I've reached back out to them, and they know that I'm there to support them, and that really gives me a lot of fulfillment, I suppose. So there's some of the strategies that I use when I take on a lot of stuff, because I do, and that's just me, and I've realised that about myself, and I do have to be careful about that, but that's part of the thing that drives me to do what I do.
Fantastic work, Warren. Now, if you're listening this morning, as Neil said, we'll have contacts if something's triggered. But if you're listening this morning and think, oh, well, I'm okay, I haven't got mental health issues, I don't really need to take it in, nice chat, but it's not about me. Well, it is about you, because mental health is part of our world. It might not be your world, but it's certainly the world of someone close to you, whether you realise that or not. And I think the best thing about the conversation this morning and what Warren does is to understand that we're all part of it, and you can make a contribution. So if what you've heard this morning interests you, please, if you're a Facebook person, get onto the Unbreakable Farmer, follow Warren's journey, what he's doing. It's extraordinary stuff, and there's some marvellous conversations come out of it, and the marvellous personal stories of people that you've attached to or you've made a difference to. I just find fascinating, Warren. And if you go into a room of 20 and one comes out better, you've ticked the box that day, buddy. And I'm just so incredibly proud to have met you and love what you do, and keep it up. You'll certainly always have an ear at this place, and keep up the good journey. And Neil will have some more information soon about those that are triggered by this, because it is a serious issue.
Yeah, well, a couple of numbers you should get if you've got that pen, folks. Beyond Blue, I did some work with them last year, and a great organisation. You can call them on 1300 22 4636. That's 1300 224636. They can put you in touch with counsellors and other people who can help you. The more urgent help is often given by Lifeline. Their number is 131114. That's 13 11 14, and they're available. Both organisations are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Help at Lifeline 13 11 14, and Beyond Blue 1300 22 46 36.
Warren, thank you so much for your time this morning. Best wishes on your journey and the effect you're having on other people's journeys. And that's, again, we reiterate, it's not just those that are struggling, it's those that are around you. There's still things that you can do. So arm yourself, be better yourself to make sure people around you are in a better position.
Yeah, no worries. That's thanks for having me on this morning, and enjoyed having the chat, and look forward to catching up with you both somewhere down the track.
Yeah, good on you. Look forward to seeing you in Geelong.
Get you back early next year, either in person or on the phone, and have another chat. That'd be great.
No worries.
Good on you, Warren. Best wishes.
Warren Davies, the Unbreakable Farmer. I think he's up in the sort of Kyabram, Marupna part of the world, isn't he? So great conversation. As I said, those numbers again, 1300 22 46 36. That's Beyond Blue, and Lifeline 13 11 14.